Breaking news, and the news continues right here on NBC News Now. I'm Tom Costello in for Hallie Jackson, and we pick up that breaking news coverage we've been watching all day. What a day in a Georgia courtroom. Explosive and unexpected testimony just wrapping up for the day in that courtroom. The Fulton County DA, Fani Willis, coming to her own defense as her election case against Donald Trump faces serious threats. Willis, furious that she was there, furious at the lawyer who called her to the stand.
Mr. Wade is a Southern gentleman. Me, not so much. He tried to implicate I slept with him at that conference, which I find to be extremely offensive. These merchants' interests are contrary to democracy, Your Honor, not to mine. No good deed goes unpunished, and I think that she betrayed our friendship. You're confused. You think I'm on trial. These people are on trial for trying to steal an election in 2020. I'm not on trial, no matter how hard you try to put me on trial. This is what you're really asking about. This is the salaciousness of all of this, right? So let's be clear, because you lied in this. Let me tell you which one you lied in. Right here. I think you lied right here. No. This is the truth, Judge. And it is a lie. It is a lie.
Okay, a lot to digest. Here are the big questions. Did DA Willis financially benefit from a relationship she had with the special prosecutor she hired by the name of Nathan Wade? Did Wade lie on the stand on a document submitted to the court about that relationship? And when did that relationship begin? That's key, because Willis and Wade, they don't dispute that they had a personal relationship, one that's apparently over, by the way, according to Willis. They just say it started in March or April of 2022. This is critical, after he was hired. But that is not what an earlier witness said today. That friend that you just heard Willis say betrayed her, she testified that Willis and Wade started the relationship in 2019 before Willis hired him, and she said the former friend witnessed it play out.
Can you give us an example?
Hugging, kissing, with affection.
All before November 1st of 2021, correct?
Yes.
While everything is really unclear in the case against Donald Trump, another one is moving full steam ahead, and that's in New York. We're going to see him go to trial on March 25th on 34 felony counts related to alleged hush money payments he made to former adult film star Stormy Daniels. We're going to talk about that in just a moment or two, but let's start with Georgia and NBC's Von Hilliard, as well as NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos and NBC News legal contributor, former prosecutor Kristen Gibbons-Fedden. Boy, I want to hear what all of you have to say. Danny, as the defense attorney, you just watched all of it play out. How do you gauge today's testimony? Wade and Willis, was Wade damaged? Was Willis strong? How do you think this plays out?
Look, I want to be clear here, which is something Fani Willis said several times, but from a technical standpoint, I don't think Willis was a particularly good witness if you measure her against witnesses who testify thousands of times a day. I think Judge McAfee gave her a little leeway because she is the Fulton County District Attorney. He showed her respect, but do I think she was effective? She may have been very effective, but it all comes down to this, in my view. It is a binary question. Does Judge McAfee believe that her explanation about paying cash, repaying cash to Nathan Wade is credible? And that's it. Because Fani Willis was consistent with Nathan Wade's testimony that she repaid him for vacations with cash. The second question is that a credible story? Just because she's consistent doesn't necessarily mean it's credible, because a lot of folks are saying, hey, you know, a lot of folks keep large amounts of cash in their home. That's fine. That's not the issue. The issue is this particular way of paying Nathan Wade in cash happens to serve her interest, and it happens to thwart the defense's motion. So that is a factor to keep in mind. It's not just keeping cash and paying with cash. There's nothing wrong with that. People do it all the time. It's whether or not it's credible that it just so happened that she paid Nathan Wade back for all these vacations, which were apparently very expensive, in cash, because that happens to benefit the state's argument that Fani Willis never received any of the money back from Nathan Wade that was paid to Nathan Wade by the state. But ultimately, she may end up having been credible enough to save the day. I think the defense has a pretty high burden to meet, and I'm not really sure which way Judge McAfee is going to go.
Kristen, I think a lot of people would be forgiven for being confused about what any of this has to do in the case against Donald Trump. Can you remind the audience, why do we care about whether Willis and Wade had any sort of a relationship and who paid for what? That has nothing to do with the allegations of trying to steal an election in Georgia.
Well, because at the end of the day, every person who is charged with a criminal offense is entitled to a fair and impartial trial. And as part of that, they are entitled to a fair investigation into the criminal allegations, as well as a fair investigation into the handling of the prosecution of the case. Basically, what the defense is asserting here is that Donald Trump and all of his co-defendants are not getting that fair and impartial investigation or fair and impartial handling of the case because there was some conflict of interest. And what they're asserting is that the conflict of interest surrounds the romantic relationship between D.A. Willis and Nathan Wade, the financial compensation that he was paid, and their mutual personal travel expenses. And that's kind of what it has to do. But at the end of the day, I do think that under Georgia law, their case is not really meeting the burden necessary to create that direct conflict and to show that just because they had that relationship, that it was a conflict or that it made the case or the investigation in an unfair way.
Yeah. The allegation is that Willis benefited from hiring Wade because essentially he then paid for her vacations so that some of the money the DA's office paid to Wade to do his job actually got kicked back to Willis. There's been no evidence so far presented in court that would substantiate that whatsoever. And the argument was, well, they did everything in cash, and she's always been somebody who used cash. Vaughn, from the political angle here, how do you expect we'll see the former president use Fani Willis's testimony here? You know, he's likely to try to campaign off of it, but he also may really try to go beyond just try to raise money. He may really try to build a political base in Georgia off of it.
Right, Tom. We have seen over the course of the entire last year Donald Trump try to focus the attention of these indictments and the trials against him against the judges that are going to be overseeing those trials, but also the prosecutors that have brought him against him. And what the last 8 hours of this pretrial hearing did was put all of the attention directly on one of those prosecutors, Fani Willis in Fulton County, who charged not only him, but other 18 co-defendants and racketeering charges, major serious state charges. And so for Donald Trump, you know, it was Fani Willis who said there from the stand during her testimony that she's not the one on trial. She fought back. She goes, it's your clients that are the ones that are on trial for subverting democracy. But for Donald Trump, he has made the case, most oftentimes not based in any sort of evidence or fact, that the prosecutors have sought to bring charges against him for their own political purposes. And now you have seen him make the case for Fani Willis, her own personal gain and financial gain. He has been pushing out on his social media account multiple posts in which he's been calling attention to the last 8 hours and suggesting that he has been unfairly charged in the state of Georgia. And so for Donald Trump, you know, we've seen him use a lack of evidence to try to mount a case for him politically. And now this point in time here, it's going to be up to the judge to determine whether there's credible evidence that potentially he could use to fend off allegations stemming from the Fulton County case against him.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, Danny, we want to play another piece of sound from the testimony today. This is going to be Willis through the day. And listen to how her tone changed as she was being questioned by other attorneys, not simply the first attorney representing the Trump side, Miss Merchant. Her tone changed. Take a listen.
Until January of 22, did any of your children stay at your house?
And you don't have to yell at me. I don't think anyone ever, this is a very lonely period in my life. I don't think anyone ever spent the night other than maybe one night. But what I very, very quickly learned is that this is a very isolating job. And 2021 was a lonely time. I turned 50 in 2021. That's probably one of the worst birthdays I've ever had. Mr. Wade is used to women that, as he told me one time, the only thing a woman can do for him is make him a sandwich. We would have brutal arguments about the fact that I am your equal. I don't need anybody to foot my bills. The only man who's ever foot my bills completely is my daddy.
So, Danny, how do you, you'd have to understand the total context of the afternoon to appreciate where she was coming from there. But essentially was saying she doesn't need Wade's money. She pays her own way. Thank you very much. How do you think she came off during this whole thing? And is it just one big distraction from the real case? And that's the one against the former president.
I'm really glad you pulled that sound because it's a great example of how Willis conveyed a message. She made a statement, and that statement may end up ultimately being effective not only in court, but also with her constituency. But what you didn't hear in that sound was the original question that was asked. And most of the time, she was not answering the question that was asked, or she was adding information that was irrelevant to the question. And if you're looking at her testimony, there are many times when her memory was spotty on things that either could be damaging or that were significant. You'd think people would remember, like, for example, whether she paid her tax liens. But then she had total recall about things like all the different countries that Nathan Wade has visited. And she liberally added those extra facts onto each question. On some occasions, she even went back and said, what was the question again? And I found myself saying, yeah, what was the question again? Look, that's the point, and that's why that sound is so terrific, because it shows that she conveyed a message, but from a technical standpoint, did she answer the question asked the way you are supposed to under the rules of evidence? No. But did she serve her purpose? Does she survive this? Maybe.
Okay, well, Kristen, last one then to you, prosecutor. Talk to us about, you would think that since she is the DA, she'd be a little more disciplined in her answers. She knows what's expected of attorneys in court. But what happens if she is removed here, Kristen?
Well, if she's removed, then another district attorney's office would go in and replace the Fulton County DA's office. So it's not like the cases would necessarily go away, but they could make an argument for dismissal based on the investigation. So they could try, I think Trump's team would still try, as well as the co-defendants who actually initiated this, would still try to get the case dismissed, but ultimately, technically, after a disqualification, what would happen is another office, sometimes the state attorney general's office, would step in and prosecute the case. But what it would do ultimately is delay the case. And I think that's the big ticket of the day whenever we're looking at all of the Trump type cases.
All right, folks, thanks very much. Good analysis, and we appreciate your expertise. Kristen, Vaughn, Danny Savalos, we will catch you probably tomorrow as we go through this one more time. Thanks to all. Let's go to Rahima Ellis now. She's in New York. We want to talk about that case. Okay, Rahima, the audience would be forgiven for saying, okay, remind me now, what case? Remind us, what case are you covering there? Because there are a lot of them.
This is a case about the hush money that Donald Trump paid to adult film star Stormy Daniels through his then personal attorney, and that's Michael Cohen. And not so much, as Alan Bragg has said, about whether the hush money was paid, but it's about how he accounted for it, that he falsified his records in the paying that money to Michael Cohen. So there are 34 counts against Donald Trump in this. It is a felony case. Were he to be convicted, he could be sentenced to up to 4 years in prison for this, but no one thinks that he would actually be sentenced to that amount of time. But in so doing, this case now is going to trial. This case he was indicted a year ago, back in April of 2023, and now here we are at the middle of February of 2024. The defense went into the courtroom today wanting to push this trial date back. They didn't want it to happen. They don't want it to happen on March 25th. And so first thing they did was ask for a dismissal. The judge said no. The next thing they did was ask to push the trial date back. The judge said no. The attorney for Mr. Trump said he has a lot of things to do. There are a lot of cases that he's up against, and that this is not fair. At one point, his attorney, Todd Blanche, said, what about his rights, referring to Donald Trump? The judge said that they had time to consider this case and that he would not accept any more delay in all of this. During this, Donald Trump sat silently in the courtroom staring at the judge, but he had a lot to say outside. Take a listen.
It's coordinated with the Attorney General of New York, Letitia James, who ought to be ashamed of herself. She's campaigned for years of trying to get Trump without knowing anything about me. It's all a rigged, it's a rigged state, it's a rigged city, it's a shame.
There is no evidence of truth to any of the things that the former president was saying, but that has been his message throughout all of this. He vehemently denies that he is responsible or culpable at any of the charges that have been presented against him. He said he is innocent of all of those charges. He expects that to be proven. And he also says that he will be in court for this trial when it goes to actually goes to trial, and he will campaign in the evening. Tom?
Okay, Rahima, thank you very much. Rahima Ellis in New York for us. Coming up, a new kind of AI that's got implications for jobs, for creators, even safety. How it makes videos just out of the words you type. Stay with us. We're back. How's your 401k? How are your stocks? Well, the stock market jumped today with the U.S. S&P setting a new record yet again. And the Dow continuing to bounce back. Look at that. The Dow up 348 points. S&P up 29, 0.5% there. Recovering from Tuesday's losses. And the S&P closing at that new record high, settling just above 5,000 points. It is the 11th record high set by the S&P so far this year. Folks, this is not normal. I'm just saying, you should know that. It's the latest ride on what's been an absolute roller coaster of a session for the S&P. A record set last Friday, followed by a meltdown on Tuesday with a new record just 2 days later. So what does this all mean? NBC's Christine Romans is following all of the data. Spell it out for us, will you, Christine? Because, you know, it's one day we're bullish and the next we're bearish, and then we're back and we're thinking, well, maybe it's bullish again. So give us the economic indicators. Why are we up so much today?
Well, look, there's a little bit of relief that maybe the soft landing is not completely out of the picture. And I wrote a piece, Tom, yesterday called Why It's Not Time to Freak Out About the Stock Market, because freaking out, frankly, is the worst financial strategy in the world. Sometimes stocks go down big, they overreact, and in this case, they overreacted to a hotter than expected inflation number earlier in the week, and then they bounce back today. So I would just say you've got a market that's trying to figure out, is the worst behind us? Is a soft landing possible? And when in the world is the Fed going to start cutting interest rates? That's what the market's grappling with, and that's why it's been moving back and forth so much.
I heard some discussion today justifying the rally, saying, well, listen, we know the Fed is going to cut sometime this year, so we can't be all doom and gloom. But what about this retail spending report we had out today? Walk us through those numbers. What does it say about the economy and consumer spending?
So consumers have done their part in this economy, and suddenly there's a shift here where a lot of different companies are noting that consumers are price sensitive, right? They know that prices have been rising for a couple of years, and they're acting with their feet and their dollars. So you saw retail sales fall here, 0.8%. You know, that's a lot more than anyone had expected, as many of these companies say they're becoming much more price sensitive. Look at some of these categories that fell. So people are looking for value. They're looking for discounts. They're tired of inflation. Now, you would think that's a bad sign about the economy, except if it shows that frugal consumers are going to be careful and they are going to actually help the soft landing scenario, because companies can't keep raising prices when the consumer is more cautious, and so that helps inflation. You see what I mean? It's kind of a virtuous cycle, if you will.
Yeah, and the inflationary data that we got for January, you know, not only is it the everyday stuff at the grocery store, I mean, housing is still very expensive. They call it shelter, by the way, which they don't really mean in a tent, but shelter, rent, it's expensive.
It is, and it rose much more than expected in January. And I'll tell you, Tom, a lot of the economists who I really trust and the wonk number crunchers have been saying those numbers are going to go down. You know, those shelter numbers are going to start going down. So some of them think that January number might have been a little bit of noise, as they say, not part of the trend, but something outside of the trend. We won't know for sure for another couple of months of this kind of data. That's what makes it so fun to watch, right?
Yeah, unless you're the one paying the rent. Not so much fun then, but Christine, thank you very much. Christine Romans. All right, let's get you over now to the 5 things our team thinks you may want to know about tonight. Number 1, a suspect was taken into custody after allegedly shooting 3 D.C. police officers yesterday, barricading himself in a home during an hours-long standoff. The officers were trying to make an arrest for animal cruelty. That suspect now charged and will likely face more charges for shooting at police. The officers were released from the hospital today. Number 2, a new report found the Bureau of Prisons failed to prevent nearly 200 inmates' deaths by suicide over 8 years. The report from a DOJ watchdog cited problems including managerial issues, policy violations, and potentially inappropriate mental health assessments, their words. The report also cites chronic staffing challenges. Number 3, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin back at work again at the Pentagon after he was released from Walter Reed earlier this week, being treated for a bladder issue. He's had health issues after a prostate cancer surgery back in December, and his doctors say the bladder problem was linked to the surgery, but not the cancer. Number 4, take a look at this. It's beef rice. Yum, say the guys in the studio. Korean scientists developed this hybrid rice coated with fish gelatin with animal muscle and fat cells inside rice grains. I'm sorry, no way, that's not for me. But they're hoping it could be a more affordable protein with a smaller carbon footprint. All right, number 5, today, a robotic moon lander launched into space. Take a look at that right there. If successful, it would be the first time the U.S. has landed on the moon in more than half a century. No people on board. It would be the first landing by a privately owned spacecraft after a failed attempt from another company last month. Cool stuff. Still to come, how did an owl end up in a Colorado toilet, a latrine? We're going to talk about that when we come back. We're back, and we're barely 2 months into 2024, and FAA numbers show that there have been even more than 200 reports of unruly passengers on U.S. flights. The latest incident, an alleged fistfight on a Southwest plane headed to Hawaii earlier this week, and now renewed warnings from the FAA as we head into the spring break travel season. At 35,000 feet, tempers can flare, and sometimes situations escalate quickly. Cell phone video from a Southwest flight Monday from California to Kauai, capturing 2 passengers exchanging words before appearing to exchange blows. The video shows others on board breaking up the mid-air fight. Southwest Airlines credits its crew and customers with helping to defuse the situation, writing, "Our #1 priority is safety." This slow-motion video shared by a passenger shows officers with the involved parties after the plane landed. Airport security would not comment, but Kauai police tell NBC News its officers did respond to assist, but no arrests were made. It is, however, the latest example of bad behavior on board planes.
Let me be clear. The FAA has zero tolerance for unruly behavior.
The FAA says incidents involving unruly passengers peaked during the height of the pandemic, particularly around the issue of mask mandates. Nearly 6,000 cases then. But while those cases have been trending down significantly over the past few years, flight crews are still encountering disruptive, at times combative individuals at higher rates than before COVID. How do you negotiate with and talk down somebody who may be behaving badly or not behaving appropriately?
The most important thing is we want to diffuse and de-escalate the situation. We don't want to make it worse.
Violent behavior or interfering with flight crews can carry hefty penalties, fines of up to $37,000 and potential criminal prosecution. It's why the FAA has been pushing a series of memes as part of a social media campaign. It also includes PSAs warning passengers about the consequences. Sarah Nelson is president of the largest flight attendants union.
Flying is not a right, it's a privilege, and we can only do it when everyone is playing by the rules.
Flying is not a right, it's a privilege. NBC covers hundreds of stories each and every day, and it's tough to read, to watch, to listen to all of them. So our bureau teams have broken down a few highlights. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions. We call it the local. Out of our southern bureau, police say a Tennessee sheriff's deputy is missing after his cruiser was found submerged in a river with a dead body in the back seat. They say they lost contact with the deputy after he made an arrest, and the body is likely a female suspect. Police are still searching for that deputy. From our Western Bureau, check out this video of 6 hikers getting airlifted to safety from a mountain in Los Angeles after getting stuck in snow. Rescue teams found the group about 9,000 feet up on Mount Baldy. The mountain can be very dangerous. Just a few days ago, rescuers found the body of a 22-year-old hiker who went missing earlier this month. Also from our Western Bureau, Colorado Parks and Wildlife officers rescued an owl who somehow got stuck in a toilet at a state park. They found it in the underground portion of a vault toilet, sort of like those old-time outhouses. Officers were able to open the hatch, and the long-eared owl was stinky but not hurt, and once he could, he flew the coop. All right, we want to take you now to a look at the image on your screen. It is a beautiful drone shot. The kind of video that you might see in a travel video, right? Except it's not real. There is no drone. There is no camera. You can't travel because the video was generated by AI. It's from a new tool just announced a few hours ago by OpenAI called Sora. All it takes is typing in a short text, a prompt, and in minutes it spits out a 60-second video clip of pretty much anything you can imagine. Brian Chung is here to break this all down for us. This is cool, Brian. I mean, it could mean millions of people, though, could be out of work, right? Because who did all this video, and what kind of an impact might it have on the jobs market?
Yeah, I mean, it's really mind-blowing. Some other video that we saw was of a woolly mammoth in a tundra. We also saw a little monster lighting up a candle, and none of it was done by any animators. All you have to do is enter in a text prompt, you hit generate, and it creates what you see in front of you. Again, nothing was shot in this case. It's all AI generated. And obviously, this is of concern in Hollywood, where you have animators, illustrators, visual effects workers who are wondering, how is this going to affect my job? And we have estimates from trade organizations and unions that have tried to project the impact of AI. 21% of U.S. film, TV, and animation jobs predicted to be partially or wholly replaced by generative AI by just 2026, Tom. So this is already happening. And I have to also point out, this tech is from the makers of ChatGPT, so very much a big technological jump for that company.
Yeah, but scary. I mean, Brian, what if I typed in right now, I want Brian Chung to tell me about the stock markets, and then I want him to walk down the street and buy a Starbucks?
You wouldn't need me.
Could it do that?
It might, and you wouldn't need to do me. But here's the thing. There are some things inside the announcement today that came from OpenAI with regards to the way that they would protect you, for example, using my likeness. So usage policies that they already have in place, the company says, will reject violent or hateful images, sexual content, celebrity likenesses, IP of others. They also say that they're engaging policymakers, educators, and artists as they develop and test this technology, which, by the way, OpenAI tells me they don't plan on releasing to the public anytime soon. But regardless, even if they say that, what we've seen is that in practice, it's hard to stop. The issues with the deepfake porn, for example, with Taylor Swift's likeness, just illustrates how difficult it is to police these things. With video, it's very much an issue.
Yeah, and you got to worry about the impact on elections. We're already seeing AI used in fake election campaigns. You got to worry if it's going to get this sophisticated. You can't tell the difference. Where is this headed? I got 10 seconds for you.
Yeah, and that's the thing where they're trying to consult, again, policymakers and industry groups. But what that yields in the long run, it remains to be seen. But again, not yet released to the public. But at some point, it very much could be very prevalent in the entertainment industry and beyond, Tom.
Yeah, you can't keep that stuff locked up. It'll always get out. Brian, thank you. Brian Chung. We have much more. The news continues right now on News Now. Here we go. Top of the hour, coming on the air with explosive testimony from the Fulton County DA about her relationship with a top prosecutor assigned to former President Trump's election interference case. How personal it got on the stand today as the DA tries to prove that she should not be disqualified from prosecuting Mr. Trump's case. Plus, what we're now learning about what started yesterday's deadly shooting during the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl celebration. In fact, we have 3 people still in critical condition. We are live in KC with the aftermath. Then, Israeli forces now raiding the main hospital in southern Gaza as we learn more about the conversation Israel's Prime Minister and President Biden had today, what it all means for this war in the Middle East. And could TikTok, as we know it, be over? Why a strategic pivot on the platform may not be playing out the way the company had hoped. Plus, former President Trump appearing at his hush money trial today in New York as he juggles other legal troubles and his bid for the White House. What it's been like on the trial for our embed, who's been covering every minute of it. Good day, I'm Tom Costello. I'm in for Hallie Jackson, and what a day it has been in Georgia. Explosive and unexpected testimony just wrapping up in that Atlanta courtroom. The Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis coming to her own defense as her election case against Donald Trump faces serious threats. Willis furious to be there, furious at the lawyer who called her to the stand.
You know, Mr. Wade is a Southern gentleman. Me, not so much. He tried to implicate. I slept with him at that conference, which I find to be extremely offensive. These merchants' interests are contrary to democracy, Your Honor, not to mine. No good deed goes unpunished, and I think that she betrayed our friendship. You're confused. You think I'm on trial. These people are on trial for trying to steal an election in 2020. I'm not on trial, no matter how hard you try to put me on trial. This is what you're really asking about. This is the salaciousness of all of this, right? So let's be clear, because you lied in this. Let me tell you which one you lied in. Right here. I think you lied right here. No. This is the truth, Judge. And it is a lie. It is a lie.
All right, a lot to get through there, but here are the big 3 questions. Did D.A. Willis financially benefit from a relationship she had with a special prosecutor she hired? His name is Nathan Wade. Wade, did he lie on the stand and on the document that was submitted to the court? And when exactly did the relationship begin? That's key, because Willis and Wade, they don't dispute that they had a personal relationship, one that's apparently over, according to Willis. They just say it started in March or April of 2022 after he was hired. But that is not what an earlier witness said today. That is a friend, now apparently a former friend, who you heard Willis say betrayed her. She testified that Willis and Wade had a relationship that started in 2019, not 2022, 2019, before Willis hired him, and she, the former friend, witnessed it all play out.
Can you give us an example?
Hugging, kissing, just affection.
All before November 1st of 2021, correct?
Yes.
All right, while everything is really unclear in that case against Donald Trump, another is moving full steam ahead in New York. Will go to trial. He will go to trial, I should say, on March 25th on 34 felony counts related to alleged hush money payments to be made and were paid allegedly to a former adult film star, Stormy Daniels. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but let's start with Georgia. MSNBC's Katie Fang is in Atlanta. NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos is also standing by, and NBC's senior national politics reporter John Allen. Katie, you're an attorney. Walk us through this explosive and unexpected testimony today from Fani Willis.
Yeah, so we know that DA Fani Willis was served with a subpoena to testify today. But the biggest question, Tom, was it going to happen? Now, we heard Nathan Wade testify earlier today. He confirmed that the personal relationship that began with Fani Willis, which, as you noted, is now over, it began in March of 2022, which is after he was appointed special prosecutor. Now, our viewers have already heard some of the back and forth that went between Fani Willis and one of the defense attorneys, but there were a number of zingers. Some one-liners that came out of Fani Willis today about her personal life that viewers are going to want to listen to. Take a listen.
Until January of 22, did any of your children stay at your house?
And you don't have to yell at me. I don't think anyone ever, this was a very lonely period in my life. I don't think anyone ever spent the night other than maybe one night. But what I very, very quickly learned is that this is a very isolating job, and 2021 was a lonely time. I turned 50 in 2021, That's probably one of the worst birthdays I've ever had. Mr. Wade is used to women that, as he told me one time, the only thing a woman can do for him is make him a sandwich. We would have brutal arguments about the fact that I am your equal. I don't need anybody to foot my bills. The only man who's ever foot my bills completely is my daddy.
Like I said, some zinger one-liners coming out of Fani Willis today. But Judge McAfee, in this case, the presiding judge, is going to weed through all of it because this is an evidentiary hearing. And now the only evidence that we've heard so far is only from that former friend of Fani Willis this morning saying that she thinks and she swears that that personal relationship began before Nathan Wade became special prosecutor. But ultimately, there is law that we're obviously going to talk about with Danny as well that deals with whether or not there's an actual conflict of interest here. And in the absence of it, then the defense hasn't met its burden to get her disqualified off the case.
That's exactly where I wanted to go, because at the moment, we have two counselors here, and I'm not one. It sounds to me like a lot of hearsay today. We have one witness claiming that they had a relationship before they said they had a relationship, right? Danny, most lawyers would never recommend that their client take the stand. How do you think she did, and do you agree that so far it's hearsay?
Well, let's talk about taking the stand. It's not a question of recommending not to take the stand. Fani Willis, in my view, was minutes away from not having to take the stand at all. Her attorneys, her prosecutors, argued mightily to keep her off the stand, and the issue seemed in doubt. It appeared that Judge McAfee was leaning towards not permitting the defense to call Fani Willis to the stand, and she came in obviously to the surprise of her own legal team, and overrode them and said, you know what, stop your argument. I'm taking the stand. So it's one thing for an attorney to recommend his client not take the stand. It's an entirely other thing for the attorney to argue against it, and then the client say, you know what, sit down, counsel, I've got this. How do I think she did? Well, you showed that sound, and I think that's a great example of, had she been giving an interview, she did a great job of conveying a number of different messages. And as far as her testimony goes, she may have carried the day. She may have convinced Judge McAfee that the defense has not met their burden. But I go back to this. If you're strictly looking at technically how did she perform as a witness, I have to say not great. And by that, I mean, she didn't always answer the question that was asked. She answered the question she wanted to ask. But look, she knows what she's doing. And that may have saved the day.
But was it her pride getting in the way? I mean, if her attorneys are saying she doesn't need to take the stand, you thought the judge might rule in their favor, and suddenly she says, the heck with it, I'm taking the stand. Was it just that she was not about to let her suspect lies, in her view, stand the day?
Right, but Fani Willis is an attorney, not just any attorney, but the elected district attorney. What's that?
She was hot. You could tell she was angry.
Oh, she came in very hot. I mean, this had all the high drama of a legal fiction, because it was unbelievable that she came in the middle of her attorney's argument to keep her off the stand, and got on that stand and came out with fireworks. And I have to say, towards the end of her examination by Ashley Merchant, I thought that Fani Willis was landing some body blows with the way she answered questions. I think she kept Merchant off balance, and eventually, I think towards the end, Merchant was somewhat out of steam after basically carrying the day for the defense earlier on. It then fell to the other defense counsel to try and make up some headway. But at the end of the day, I really think that Fani Willis's approach of answering whatever question she wanted to answer, and Judge McAfee allowing her to do so, it may have done the job, because by the end of the day, even the judge was fatigued. Move it along. This has already been covered. And really, the defense didn't score the points I thought they would on the cash issue.
John, let's talk politics here. How do you expect Donald Trump will use today's testimony to further his case?
Well, I think certainly in the court of public opinion, you've got Donald Trump facing trial, prosecution in New York, effectively for things around trying to keep an alleged affair quiet. And here he's being prosecuted on completely different grounds by someone who effectively tried to keep an alleged affair quiet. So I think from a public relations point of view, that's an argument that he can make. That he is being treated, it goes into his argument of being treated unfairly. Of course, what Fani Willis is looking at as a prosecutor is whether he tried to overturn the 2020 election, and who she was in a romantic relationship with and when has nothing to do with whether or not Donald Trump broke the law in terms of trying to overturn the election. But I think what you're going to largely see is sort of a partisan breakdown where, Republicans say, look, this is a sham. Fani Willis was doing terrible stuff. And you're going to see Democrats say that this case against Trump needs to go forward, which does not mean that all of them will say Fani Willis did a good job. I think, listening to Democrats, some of them believe that the case could be compromised by this controversy surrounding her, that she is no longer the person to sort of carry that prosecution forward. So we'll have to see what happens here. I thought it was fascinating in terms of what Danny was talking about, this unexpected, sort of legal fiction type of drama here. And it'll be interesting to see what the judge decides. But I think she took the stand because now there are two people on the record having sworn under oath that they didn't have a relationship before a certain point. And there's one person saying that they did and basically saying, she saw hugging and kissing.
Right. Yeah. Katie, first of all, what do you think? Reading body language, how do you think the judge is feeling about this at the moment? And second of all, explain what you think about Nathan Wade's testimony in the morning, how he did.
Yeah, so Judge McAfee, he does a really good job of keeping a poker face. I've been in all of the big hearings with him, even some of the smaller ones. He does not let his emotions be, expressed in any visible way. But like Danny said, there was exasperation because by the end of the day, this has been going on since 9:30 in the morning. And because the defense attorneys get each a bite at the apple to be able to ask questions of these witnesses, albeit Judge McAfee saying, please, we're not going to be repetitive. And he was trying to keep them in line. Even the judge was saying, OK, let's move on. Let's move on. But as you noted, there was definitely fireworks, but there was less so with Nathan Wade. Nathan Wade definitely did not come out as strongly as he could. I think Nathan Wade was trying to be so exquisitely careful because he is currently still in litigation with his estranged wife for his divorce. And there were actually several references, Tom, to that divorce, filings in that case, whether Nathan Wade was telling the truth when it came to his finances in that case. And so I think Nathan Wade was trying to be extra careful with what he said. And when that happens, Tom, when witnesses are in the witness box and they're testifying that way, even if they're just trying to be thoughtful with what their testimony is, sometimes it looks like they're not telling the truth, right? Sometimes it looks like they're trying to hide something. But compare that to Fani Willis, who came out guns a-blazing saying, you know what, I am going to defend my reputation against what I am calling out to be lies. And let me be clear, she said definitively on the stand, pointing to Ashley Merchant, the lawyer for Michael Roman, you are a liar. And that was huge.
Yeah, and she's a DA. She knows the language she's supposed to use in court. Danny, last question. What happens if the judge does say, sorry, but the DA is off the case, Willis is gone? What happens next?
It's not the end of the case, and I guess it's theoretically possible that either or could be removed. You might see Wade removed and not Willis, but I think it's either all or nothing in this case. So if they are removed, I think it's a major body blow to the case because you got to find another prosecutor, whether in the AG's office or somewhere else, who's interested in taking up this case.
All right. Thank you, Danny, Katie Fang, and also John Allen. Good discussion. Thank you all. We appreciate it. Rahema Ellis joins me now. She's up in New York. All right, Rahema, we're headed now to a court on March 25th for jury selection in this hush money trial. This is the one, hush money to a porn star. And Mr. Trump says he's going to be there, right?
Yeah, he says he is going to be there. He was there today. And he didn't have to be. The judge had waived his appearance today, saying that it was not necessary. But Mr. Trump did show up. He was silent during the proceedings, staring at the judge, but not saying anything, not pounding the table as he had done in other cases, the Eugene Carroll case. But he was very quiet. But did he have to be there? His attorneys were saying that they didn't want him to have to be here. They don't want him to have to be there on March 25th. They would rather this case be pushed back to a later date because they say Mr. Trump is facing other matters, including campaigning for presidency, and that he should be allowed to do that he should have that right. The judge says he does have that right, but he also is going to be prosecuted in this case with 34 felony counts against him. But again, Donald Trump said it is taking away his ability to do what he wants to do on the campaign trail. Just listen.
Instead of being in South Carolina and other states campaigning, I'm stuck here. It's an election interference case.
How do you plan on campaigning while you're in court, sir?
I'll do it in the evening.
Yeah, he has said this case, the judge has said this case could go for about 6 weeks. And Donald Trump says that he's going to be present, as you heard him say just there, after the trial gets underway and there's testimony that day. He's going to get on his plane and go campaigning for the office of president again. Tom?
Okay, Rahema, thank you very much. All right, now to Kansas City and new details in the investigation into yesterday's deadly mass shooting at the Chiefs Super Bowl victory parade as the city gets ready now to hold a memorial vigil later tonight. Police now say these scenes of chaos and confusion, they all started with a dispute between several people. One person was killed. Lisa Lopez Galvan, who you see right there on your screen. She was a popular radio DJ who was there at the parade with her son. Her siblings talked to NBC News about how she should be remembered.
She just brought people together. She did it to bring happiness, and even in sad times in other instances. That's who she was. She wanted pure joy.
22 others were wounded or injured. Police say at least half of them are 16 or younger. 2 juveniles are in custody in connection with the shooting. The scene where the violence unfolded was right there, Union Station, quiet today. The banners marking the Chiefs' Super Bowl victory still up, along with the remnants of the celebration. All left behind as people ran for their lives. One couple shot in the melee talked to our team about how it all unfolded.
I heard, you don't do this or something like that, and people start rushing and pop, pop, pop. In my head, it's fireworks, so I think I'm looking for them, and then, I felt like I got hit. I turned to start running, and I couldn't run. I just crawled.
NBC's George Solis joins us now from Kansas City. George, police are really stressing that this investigation is still in its early stages with a lot of questions still outstanding, right?
Yeah, that's right, Tom. And it's probably the most frustrating thing for the people of this community and anyone that's been watching this story unfold nationwide is the lack of expedient information in this investigation. You mentioned 2 of those juveniles that were detained. As of this hour, they have still not been charged. Police today saying they also obtained some weapons from the scene. They didn't say how many, what caliber, how many shots were fired. So it really boils down to what we do know and what we don't know. We also don't know the relationship of the 2 juveniles that were detained. And as you've been hearing, we're now getting some of those stories, some of those harrowing details of people that were there during the shooting, people that had to run away from others that were calling out for help, people that saw the shooters, people that were making sure that their loved ones were okay. We actually spoke with a mom whose whole family was at the celebration there, Tom. Lisa Felder saying her daughters were with her. They were documenting the whole thing. It was supposed to be a day of fun, a day of celebration for them. Instead, they ended up barricading themselves inside of Union Station there to make sure that they were safe. They had to worry about other people, other family members that were recording the celebration. They didn't know. Mom was stuck at one point. They had to get her out of a barricade to make sure. At one point, she's telling them, just leave me. And they're like, no, we're not leaving you behind. And again, these are just some of the dramatic stories that are starting to unfold as we move forward in this investigation. We caught up with them a little earlier today. Take a listen to what they told me.
I watched all the footage from yesterday and I'm still shaking. It's just the fact that I couldn't really panic or I couldn't show how I felt because I had to put a brave face on for my little sister, for my pregnant sister, for my older brother, for my mom. I'm worried about my family, not only myself.
Yeah, again, just heartbreaking to hear some of these stories. And again, more of them that are starting to trickle through social media and through some of the media out here. Our own affiliate, we've been seeing them here after being up almost 24 hours after this incident. You can see just how fatigued and how heartbroken they are. Pain in this community set to last a really long time, Tom.
Yeah, we know that 12 of the victims who are being treated at Children's Mercy Hospital are expected to recover, but what do we know about the others?
Yeah, so there is a little bit of a silver lining, if you will. Here at the hospital, we're told there's only 3 left, and they're all expected to recover. We're still trying to get some information as far as some of the discrepancies and some of the ages and injured. Earlier today, police saying that the youngest appeared to be 8. Hospital officials saying it was a 6-year-old. The belief here is that there is some information as far as those that were injured, as far as some of the activity and the rushing around, and then those that were actually shot. So again, at this point, it does appear, just based on some of the information, University Health Hospital saying 3 patients are still hospitalized, 2 in critical, 1 in the ICU, 1 stable. 5 were dismissed from the emergency room, and here at Children's Mercy, 3 still hospitalized. And again, fortunately, they do appear to be on the road to recovery. But again, as we await more information, more details in this investigation, we know it's going to be a long healing process for Kansas City, Tom.
It will. George Solis, thank you very much. Here on Wall Street, stocks jumped today with the S&P setting a new record and the Dow continuing to bounce back. You can see it right here. The Dow closing up. Look at this, 348 points, recovering Tuesday's losses. And the S&P closing at a new record high, settling just above 5,000 points. It is the 11th record high set by the S&P so far this year. No, that's not usual. It's the latest ride, though, on what's been really an absolute roller coaster for the S&P. A record set last Friday, followed by a meltdown on Tuesday, with a new record just 2 days later. So what does it all mean? NBC's Christine Robbins is following all of the data. Spell it out for us, will you, Christine? Because, you know, it's one day we're bullish and the next we're bearish, and then we're back and we're thinking, well, maybe it's bullish again. So give us the economic indicators. Why are we up so much today?
Well, look, there's a little bit of relief that maybe the soft landing is not completely out of the picture. And I wrote a piece, Tom, yesterday called Why It's Not Time to Freak Out About the Stock Market, because freaking out, frankly, is the worst financial strategy in the world. Sometimes stocks go down big, they overreact, and in this case, they overreacted to a hotter than expected inflation number earlier in the week, and then they bounce back today. So I would just say you've got a market that's trying to figure out, is the worst behind us? Is a soft landing possible? And when in the world is the Fed going to start cutting interest rates? That's what the market's grappling with, and that's why it's been moving back and forth so much.
I heard some discussion today justifying the rally, saying, well, listen, we know the Fed is going to cut sometime this year, so we can't be all doom and gloom. But what about this retail spending report we had out today? Walk us through those numbers. What does it say about the economy and consumer spending?
So consumers have done their part in this economy, and suddenly there's a shift here where a lot of different companies are noting that consumers are price sensitive, right? They know that prices have been rising for a couple of years, and they're acting with their feet and their dollars. So you saw retail sales fall here 0.8%. You know, that's a lot more than anyone had expected, as many of these companies say they're becoming much more price sensitive. Look at some of these categories that fell. So people are looking for value. They're looking for discounts. They're tired of inflation. Now, you would think that's a bad sign about the economy, except if it shows that frugal consumers are going to be careful and they are going to actually help the soft landing scenario, because companies can't keep raising prices when the consumer is more cautious, and so that helps inflation. You see what I mean? It's kind of a virtuous cycle, if you will.
Yeah, and the inflationary data that we got for January, you know, not only is it the everyday stuff at the grocery store, I mean, housing is still very expensive. They call it shelter, by the way, which they don't really mean in a tent, but shelter, rent, it's expensive.
It is, and it rose much more than expected in January. And I'll tell you, Tom, a lot of the economists who I really trust and the wonk number crunchers have been saying those numbers are going to go down. You know, those shelter numbers are going to start going down. So some of them think that January number might have been a little bit of noise, as they say, not part of the trend, but something outside of the trend. We won't know for sure for another couple of months of this kind of data. That's what makes it so fun to watch, right?
Yeah, unless you're the one paying the rent. Not so much fun then, but Christine, thank you very much. Christine Romans. All right. Today, we are learning more about what a top House Republican meant when he warned of a serious national security threat. A U.S. official and a congressional source tell NBC News it's all about a Russian nuclear-powered space asset that could be weaponized, targeting U.S. satellites. The White House, though, describing it differently, trying to ease public concern.
I can confirm that it is related to an anti-satellite capability that Russia is developing. First, this is not an active capability that's been deployed. And though Russia's pursuit of this particular capability is troubling, there is no immediate threat to anyone's safety.
Well, you know, the only reason we're even talking about this is because of the statement yesterday from the House Intel Chair, Mike Turner, who called on President Biden to declassify information. Today, the so-called Gang of Four, including Turner, meeting with National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan on this very threat. The meeting was planned before Turner's statement. NBC's Sahil Kapoor is covering it all from Capitol Hill. Sahil, what information have you gleaned about this meeting and about the concerns of this Russian space asset?
Well, there's some real confusion over why Congressman Turner publicized this in the way he did, or at least put out this cryptic statement. It was a highly unusual thing. It caught many of his fellow lawmakers by surprise. It caught senators on the Intel Committee in that chamber also by surprise. One thing the Biden administration is doing is trying to dispel any notion that it blessed this, the publication of this statement, that it had anything to do with the way Mike Turner put out that unusual statement. Take a listen here to what John Kirby and the administration had to say about this.
If there's a presumption here that somehow the administration gave a green light for this information to get public yesterday, that is false. That is not true. That did not happen. We were eventually going to get to a point where we were going to be able to share it with the American people.
Now, the question of why Mike Turner did it this way, well, here's a hint. A new NBCNews.com story by our colleagues Ryan Nobles, Julie Sirkin, and Dan DeLuce says a Republican congressional aide quoted as saying Turner is concerned and angry at the uncertainty over a couple of pieces of business on Capitol Hill. The first is the fate of aid to Ukraine, as well as what happens next with the expiring Section 702 of FISA, which is the warrantless surveillance law that House Republicans keep punting in the midst of disagreements about what to do on the civil liberties components of that, Tom.
Yeah, and the just retired four-star general who today wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal talking about the need to keep FISA, if at all possible, because it's done great good, he said. And then let's make it even more clear. If you heighten the threat from Russia, that applies even more pressure to Republicans to give the money to Ukraine to defend themselves.
Yeah, exactly, Tom. And this is where critics of providing, aid to Ukraine and critics of extending these FISA warrantless surveillance authority as is, particularly on the Republican side, say they smell something fishy here. They're wondering if the release of the statement in the way, that Mike Turner did it was an attempt to put pressure to advance these priorities of his. Let's put out, a statement, or at least a snippet from a letter that Congressman Andy Ogles on the right, a right-wing member said, quote, a reckless disregard of the implications and consequences said information would have on geopolitics, domestic and foreign markets, or the well-being and psyche of the American people, unquote. That's him describing his concerns about the way Mike Turner put this out. Congressman Tim Burchett, another conservative member, said this smells like a deep state move to him, an attempt from him, quote, he says, quote, we're looking at throwing more money to Ukraine to fight Russia. He is not a proponent of this, and he believes that there's some connection here between this statement. And unconfirmed here, we're not reporting that this is precisely, what the reason for this was, but there's certainly a growing sense within the Republican conference that Mike Turner had some motivations.
So many motivations and hidden agendas and Byzantine ways of getting things done on Capitol Hill, right across the street. Sahil, thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, a surprising endorsement tonight for President Biden coming from the Russian President, Vladimir Putin, who says Mr. Biden is better for Russia than Donald Trump. The Russian leader now says he'd prefer a, quote, more experienced and predictable Joe Biden than Republican front runner Donald Trump. They are Putin's most direct comments yet on the presidential election. NBC's Hallie is posted up near the White House and joins us now. Hallie, Putin is wily and his motives are suspect, to say the least. How's the White House reacting?
Yeah, Tom, certainly President Putin's most direct comments, as you mentioned, about this election. But you'll remember not his first when talking about our country's election process. Remember, in 2016, President Putin made it very well known his support for then candidate Trump and his dislike for Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton in that election that the intelligence community later concluded that Russia meddled in, although President Putin continues to deny that. So these comments endorsing President Biden were certainly surprising, especially in the wake of those comments by former President Trump last week when he said he would support Russia invading any NATO ally that didn't pay what he deemed their fair share in defense spending. And they're also surprising considering what we've heard President Biden say in regards to President Putin. He has not minced words when talking about the leader, especially after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, when he's called him, among other things, a war criminal. So the White House came out very swiftly and strongly this morning. White House spokesperson Andrew Bates putting out a statement saying, quote, Mr. Putin should stay out of America's elections. The White House going further during today's White House press briefing with spokesperson John Kirby saying, quote, I think Mr. Putin knows very well what this administration has been doing to counter Russia's malign influence around the world, certainly what they've been doing inside Ukraine. And as you mentioned, these comments are certainly suspicious, certainly raised a lot of eyebrows. And some believe that Putin may have had another motive in issuing these complimentary comments about President Biden. Potentially, some believe, to sort of issue an olive branch between the U.S. and Russia, especially as tensions between the two countries are at some of the highest they have ever been, and especially in the wake of what U.S. officials have confirmed today with this evolving space-based satellite-aimed capability by Russia, certainly raising concerns of U.S. officials, Tom.
Well, listen, he's a former KGB officer, and he is always thinking in chess moves, not one step ahead, multiple steps ahead. And he also knows that Trump is under pressure for being pro-Russian. So if he makes Trump look better by trying to sound like he's an ally of Biden, what's his real motivation is what I've heard some speculation out there among intelligence experts.
Exactly, sort of reverse psychology in the months before the election. And we know that in that interview that he had recently with Tucker Carlson, he also talked about sort of the electoral process and what Trump would eventually be giving in a potential second term. Also, in this interview that he did with Russian state TV, he was asked about these age concerns about President Biden in the wake of Special Counsel Hur's report. And again, he issued very complimentary words saying, just paraphrasing here, that his last interaction with President Biden, he didn't have any sort of worries or concerns about his age or memory struggles, Tom.
Real quickly, Trump made a statement in reaction today, Hallie?
I haven't seen that reaction, Tom, but
okay.
I can actually check back and get back to you when I do see that.
We'll watch for it as well. Hallie, thank you very much. Hallie Ruffin near the White House for us. Coming up, how 2 high school seniors are making history with their college scholarships, plus what Miami Beach is doing to put an end to spring break. Yes, it's true. Stay with us. Okay, to tonight's original now. You know this, in-depth reporting on a topic we keep an eye on. We are talking here about the whiplash economy, the stock market at record highs, but less spending. And as we discussed earlier, it's not really what TikTok necessarily wants to hear. That's because the social media company just recently launched its e-commerce feature on the app here in the United States. But for many users, it's now taking away from what they know and love. So, are the days of booming TikTok over? NBC's Ellen Lopez has that story.
The days of endless scrolling past dance videos, what I eat in a day, get ready with me, and the occasional funny animal now filled with ad after ad after ad. And it looks like normal content until you see this key identifier, a tiny shopping cart. It's the new era of TikTok Shop. Does it mean that we've hit peak TikTok as we know it? And could the mighty app be showing signs of user fatigue?
Anyone getting pissed off that TikTok is just turning into one giant ad?
I would never buy anything off of TikTok Shop.
Every single other post is TikTok Shop or an ad.
While TikTok doesn't disclose its data, market intelligence firm Sensor Tower says global monthly active users on the platform grew only 3% in 2023, a sharp dip from 12% the year before. And insider intelligence showing screen time plateauing.
It is concerning for any app when there is a slowdown in user growth or time spent on the app, and every minute really counts.
This year, a shakeup, dozens of employees laid off. And in a strategic pivot, TikTok now trying to be more than a social media app in what appears to be a face-off with Amazon. TikTok Shop opening its carts to the U.S. in September. Everything from skincare to spicy pickles, all directing users to their new e-commerce venture. The shift not only felt by users, but by sellers too.
But I made another video and then it just started going viral.
That's Michael Hurling, a stay-at-home dad turned wood chopper turned TikTok hat maker.
Follow along and watch how I make my first TikTok shop item. And from there, it's just been absolute chaos, or I should say a blessing.
In less than half a year, he says he sold about 27,000 hats. Also saying TikTok doled out big promotions without costing the seller a dime, dropping some items to a single cent. But those deals may be a thing of the past.
Discounts and incentives were a really good way to convince these sellers, as well as buyers, to start using the platform. The real test will be what happens when those subsidies and incentives are gone.
Buyers accustomed to shorter and shorter wait times to get that latest hot item, and TikTok seemingly hearing them out, meaning this father of three must keep up.
So if you're going viral back to back to back, you still have 3 days from that day that had to sell to get scanned by the post office and out the door.
Michael says all of it led him to a nervous breakdown.
I never really saw daylight outside. I missed baseball games. I missed holidays, kind of like an anxiety attack kind of deal, because I was just nervous. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this.
A TikTok spokesperson says, in part, they're looking for feedback from the community and have teams and tools in place to help sellers manage sales and fulfillments. It's a new high-stakes frontier. The question, will it work for users, sellers, and TikTok's bottom line? For now, keep calm and scroll on. Elwin Lopez, NBC News.
Scroll on. All right, let's get you over now to the 5 things our team thinks you might want to know about tonight. Number 1, just as we are coming on the air, lawmakers in Greece voted to legalize same-sex marriage, the first Orthodox Christian country to do that. You can see people celebrating in the streets there. Greece's prime minister called this a milestone for human rights. The Greek Orthodox Church opposed legalizing same-sex marriage. Number 2, Detroit Pistons star Isaiah Stewart was arrested for assault after allegedly punching a Phoenix Suns player before a game. Phoenix police say it was in the parking lot area. The Suns called it unacceptable, and the Pistons said that they are gathering information and responding to the NBA and the local police. NBC News has reached out to the players' reps for comments. Number 3, Miami Beach authorities are cracking down on spring break after deadly shootings and hundreds of arrests last year. So they're doing things like restricting beach entrances and adding security checkpoints and bag checks, and they're planning to raise parking rates to $100 on the busiest weekends in March. A robotic moon lander launched into space. Take a look at that. If successful, it would be the first time the U.S. has landed on the moon in more than half a century, and the first landing by a privately owned spacecraft. It's a robot, by the way, no people on board, after that failed attempt from a different company last month. When we come back, new details about that mysterious oil spill in one Caribbean country. Plus, why farmers in Poland are throwing eggs at an EU building. Back in a minute. Back now, quarter of the hour, and to the Middle East we go, where Israeli special forces have raided the main hospital in southern Gaza, where thousands of desperate civilians are seeking shelter. Israel says this new operation is based on, quote, credible intelligence that bodies of hostages are inside that hospital. The raid comes just hours after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed to push ahead with an invasion of Rafah. But that's where Israel told Gaza civilians to flee for safety at the start of the war. We're also learning more about the agonizing story of one family there, a 6-year-old girl killed in Gaza after talking and trying to make a phone call for help. The State Department is now responding to her death. NBC's Megan Fitzgerald has more.
Tonight, agony and devastation for a mother who held out hope that her young daughter was still alive.
My daughter's weapon is a notebook and pencil.
But after 2 weeks of waiting, Wissam Hameda found out her 6-year-old daughter, Hind Rajab, was killed. All she says she has left of her little girl is this backpack, a notebook, and crowns she made to distract her from the horrors of war.
The hardest feeling that any mother can feel is when she receives the news of the martyrdom of her beloved daughter.
This is the car she called us from. This is what is left from Hind.
Hind was killed in this car, the last to die after her mother says she sent her off with 6 other relatives, hoping to escape heavy fighting in Gaza City. But the car ended up being surrounded by Israeli troops. The terrified child last heard on this emergency call. Her mother says Israeli forces opened fire on the vehicle. Everyone in the car killed except for Hind and her 15-year-old cousin Leon, who died shortly after making this initial call for help.
الو مرحبا. انتم متخبيين؟
بالسيارة احنا زميل الضبابة.
انتوا جوا السيارة؟
NBC News speaking with Hind's mother 2 weeks ago, who said then she managed to speak to Hind in the car. Fighting back tears, she told us her daughter said the bullets hadn't hit her yet. Hind bravely staying on the phone with these Palestinian Red Crescent operators for more than 3 hours, telling them she was scared of the dark and pleading for someone to help her. Two first responders, Ahmed and Youssef, went in to try and save Hind. The 2 men killed while trying to reach Hind, according to the Palestinian Red Crescent Society.
The remaining body parts here are totally burnt.
The IDF telling NBC News this weekend it was looking into the matter. It's an incident that's touched hearts around the world. The U.S. State Department pressed this week, saying they're also troubled.
We are devastated about the reports of the death of Hind Rajab. I will tell you that I have a little girl that's about to turn 6 myself, and so it is just a devastating account, a heartbreaking account for this child, and of course there have been thousands of other children who have died as a result of this conflict, and every one of them is a tragedy.
But for parents like Wissam Hameda, it's a feeling of grief that will last a lifetime.
God willing, I will see you in heaven, my daughter, my beloved.
Tom, the U.S. State Department says they have reached out to Israel and told them to urgently investigate the incident. Now, the State Department says Israel is doing so and that the U.S. is expecting the results of the investigation, which could also come with accountability measures. Tom?
All right, Megan, thank you very much. NBC News covers hundreds of other international stories each day, and it's awfully tough to read, watch, or listen to everything. So our international teams have broken down some highlights. Here are some of the things they say are happening in their regions. They call it the global. In Colombia, a joint operation between Colombia and Ecuador intercepted a makeshift submarine filled with 4 tons of cocaine. The 2 countries' navies were searching for missing fishermen when they spotted the so-called narco sub, commonly used to smuggle drugs. The Colombian Coast Guard says the cocaine worth about $137 million. In Poland, a group of farmers pelted a European Commission office with eggs and burnt tires on the steps outside. They're protesting new EU climate change measures that they say really would cause costs to rise in Poland and opening them up to unfair foreign competition. The farmers plan to blockade all border crossings with Ukraine and protest in Warsaw next week. In Trinidad and Tobago, an update on that mysterious mysterious oil spill we told you about earlier this week. Authorities say they think the capsized barge was being tugged from Panama to the nearby country of Guyana, but they still haven't found the owner of the vessel, and they're still cleaning it up. When we come back, what former President Donald Trump's promising to do if he's reelected. And we're right back in a minute. We're back. Donald Trump appearing at his hush money trial. We told you about at the top of the hour in yet another split-screen moment for the former president. Just 24 hours ago, he was there in South Carolina rallying. And it's at rallies like these that Mr. Trump reveals the real policy plans he has should he make it back to the White House. Campaign embed Jake Taylor has been on the trail with the Trump campaign for months. He has more.
You don't mind if I go off teleprompter like a lot, do you? So much more exciting.
At a Trump rally, it's often his spur-of-the-moment remarks that make news.
You know, one thing about running, you do need a little bit of a personality.
That personality, one of his top draws among supporters.
He's going to do what he's going to do.
He's sarcastic, he's funny, and I love him.
But what lies between the lines of Trump's comedic chops and meme-like banter are his actual plans if reelected to the White House. And if you listen, Trump tells the crowd exactly what he hopes to accomplish. A more aggressive and ambitious version of his 2016 platform, including some policies he didn't get through in his first term. A record-setting deportation of immigrants, eliminating the Department of Education, a hardline approach on global affairs, and an extreme crackdown on crime. On the border, an expanded approach to 2016, promising to not only reinstate his travel ban on certain Muslim-majority countries, but to include any nation he sees fit.
I will immediately reinstate and expand the wildly successful Trump travel ban on entry from terror-plagued countries,
while vowing to set records for deportation of immigrants.
The largest deportation operation in American history.
On education, Trump intends to slash the federal department entirely.
By the way, we're going to terminate the Department of Education, if you know. Fast. Almost the first thing we're going to do.
Also pledging to cut funding of any public school that has a mask mandate for child safety, something increasingly rare. On crime, Trump goes even further, suggesting a punishment of death even for some misdemeanor criminals.
Very simply, if you rob a store, you can fully expect to be shot as you are leaving that store. If you want to solve the drug problem in the United States, really solve it, you have to bring back the death penalty for drug dealers.
Also saying he won't hesitate to send U.S. military troops into cities he calls crime dens.
And one of the other things I'll do, because, you know, you're supposed to not be involved in that. You just have to be asked by the governor or the mayor to come in. The next time, I'm not waiting.
And on global affairs, protectionist and isolationist. If reelected, Trump says he'll enact a 10% tariff on all U.S. imports, a plan both sides of the aisle have argued would discourage economic activity and possibly launch a global trade war. Also suggesting he would encourage Russia to attack a U.S. allied country in NATO if they didn't pay their fair share.
You didn't pay? You're delinquent? No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay your bills.
And finally, promising legal consequences for his opponent, President Biden.
I will appoint a real special prosecutor to go after the most corrupt president in the history of the United States of America, Joe Biden.
In Trump fashion, denying it would be political retaliation while stirring up his supporters.
There'll be no revenge. No revenge. Does everybody agree? No revenge.
Most of these policy items on trade, the border, and crime overshadowed as Trump splits time between the campaign and the courtroom. But while attention is turned towards the 91 felony charges against him, if you listen to any of his rallies, Trump's policy agenda is right there, on the table, and more alarming than ever before. Jake Traylor, NBC News.
Coming up, a new kind of AI that's got implications for jobs, creators. You got to see the story, even safety. We're coming back. Okay. Whatever you're doing, just stop for a minute. I want you to see this. Look at this. It's a beautiful drone shot, right? The kind of video that you see and you might expect a travel video or commercial. It's not real. This video was generated by AI. It's from a new tool just announced just a few hours ago called OpenAI. It's called Sora. All it takes is just typing in a short text prompt, and then in minutes, it spits out a 60-second video, a clip of pretty much anything you can imagine. NBC's Brian Chung joins us now. This is cool, Brian. I mean, yeah, it could mean millions of people, though, could be out of work, right? Because who did all this video, and what kind of an impact might it have on the jobs market?
Yeah, I mean, it's really mind-blowing. Some other video that we saw was of a woolly mammoth in a tundra. We also saw a little monster lighting up a candle, and none of it was done by any animators. All you have to do is enter in a text prompt, you hit generate, and it creates what you see in front of you. Again, nothing was shot in this case. It's all AI generated. And obviously, this is of concern in Hollywood, where you have animators, illustrators, visual effects workers who are wondering, how is this going to affect my job? And we have estimates from trade organizations and unions that have tried to project the impact of AI. 21% of U.S. film, TV, and animation jobs predicted to be partially or wholly replaced by generative AI by just 2026, Tom. So this is already happening. And I have to also point out, this tech is from the makers of ChatGPT, so very much a big technological jump for that company.
Yeah, but scary. I mean, Brian, what if I typed in right now, I want Brian Chung to tell me about the stock markets, and then I want him to walk down the street and buy a Starbucks?
You wouldn't need me.
Could it do that?
It might, and you wouldn't need to do me. But here's the thing. There are some things inside the announcement today that came from OpenAI with regards to the way that they would protect you, for example, using my likeness. So usage policies that they already have in place, the company says, will reject violent or hateful images, sexual content, celebrity likenesses, IP of others. They also say that they're engaging policymakers, educators, and artists as they develop and test this technology, which, by the way, OpenAI tells me they don't plan on releasing to the public anytime soon. But regardless, even if they say that, what we've seen is that in practice, it's hard to stop. The issues with the deepfake porn, for example, with Taylor Swift's likeness, just illustrates how difficult it is to police these things. With video, it's very much an issue.
Yeah, and you got to worry about the impact on elections. We're already seeing AI used in fake election campaigns. You got to worry if it's going to get this sophisticated. You can't tell the difference. Where is this headed? I got 10 seconds for you.
Yeah, and that's the thing where they're trying to consult, again, policymakers and industry groups. But what that yields in the long run, it remains to be seen. But again, not yet released to the public. But at some point, it very much could be very prevalent in the entertainment industry and beyond, Tom.
Yeah, you can't keep that stuff locked up. It'll always get out. Brian, thank you. Brian Chung. We have much more. The news continues right now on News Now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.